right. Drugs. Well, addiction, but drugs. So we're going to talk about addiction models today, and then various different kinds of drugs, how drugs work in your brain. So there's a little bit of physiology here that we're going to talk about, but mostly addiction models, and that way we can then move into specific drugs. So on Monday we'll talk about alcohol. On Wednesday we'll talk about cannabis. If you have Netflix before Wednesday, please do watch the Weed Explained. So it's the Vox Explained series, and it's the weed episode. It's about 20 minutes. So if you don't have Netflix, you can do a free trial and watch that. I mean, I'm going to refer to a lot of the stuff that's in there, and because we're doing it this way, I can't actually share with you the material because it's Netflix. It's copyrighted like crazy. So, and now we don't have 20 minutes to then devote to it since we're sort of running late. Oh, snap, crackle, pop! Astrid got me a donut. So I'm going to eat this on stream while you watch Pee Wee Herman scare the living bejesus out of you. Right? Everybody ready? Let's do this. It's insane. Okay?
This is crack.
Are you all thoroughly scared now? Not even once. Not even once. Alright. I was kind of hungry. No, sorry. Didn't mean to do that again. Alright. This is going to be a little bit of a review if you've had HED 264. I think it's 264. The drug ed class. This is such bad streaming television here. Eating while on stream. So bad. Am I sad about it? No, it's Friday. Okay. Good thing we're not talking about nutrition or obesity today, right? Alright, addiction. That's the definition of addiction. Okay. And generally speaking, we're going to be talking about psychoactive substances. Okay. Whether they're natural or synthetic. LSD was developed in a lab. But cannabis is a plant that grows, right? Alcohol is the natural byproduct of yeast fermenting sugars. So we're going to be talking about these psychoactive substances primarily. That is not to say that you cannot be addicted, or that you can't be addicted to behaviors, because you can. The difference here is that you are likely addicted to the brain chemistry changes. So dopamine being the primary reward neurotransmitter, you become addicted to that high. But here we're going to talk about the substances, and then alcohol and cannabis and nicotine in certain stages over the next few days, right? And so addiction is characterized by not only physical dependence, but psychological dependence, yeah? And then the DSM-5 has renamed this, essentially this diagnosis, has renamed this diagnosis to be substance use disorder. And you can actually apply substance use disorder to any substance. So are you addicted to crack? Well, then you have substance use disorder, specifically the drug of choice being crack. This could be heroin. This could be other opioids. This could be cannabis. This can be alcohol. And there are several indicators for the physical and psychological dependencies. I don't have those listed, but if you are an internet sleuth, you can find those. To be diagnosed with substance use disorder, you will have 3 or more of the indicators that are listed in the DSM. Okay. Some of the, broadly speaking, that's impaired control, social impairment, and the risky use of a drug. So if you are engaging in behavior that is risky, okay? Now, further terminology, so physical dependence. The thing that I want you to connect with physical dependence is withdrawal symptoms. So things like nausea, headaches, aches and pains elsewhere in the body, headaches, and then other aches and pains, right? And that is because once you stop taking the drug, your body has adjusted its homeostasis to the drug and its effects. And so once you take that, you are now below baseline homeostasis. And so your body's like, I don't like this. Why are you doing this to me? Okay. And then there's psychological dependence, as I said, with addiction. So this is a change in behavior. Okay. And generally speaking, it comes in the form of obsessive compulsive behavior, and specifically a compulsion to engage in that behavior, to receive the effects. Okay. And so that's why risky behavior is extremely an extremely important quality of substance use disorder as far as the DSM-5 is concerned, because people who are addicted to a substance engage in behaviors that they normally would not do if they were not addicted to that substance. Okay. A couple of other bits of terminology. Tolerance. So this is what I was referencing with your body adapting to the drug use by resetting homeostasis. And so if you want to achieve the same effect that you did when you first started doing the drug, then you need to take larger and larger doses of it. And that's how some drugs then lead to overdose, because you will reach a point that your body cannot handle more of the drug. You basically shut your brain off. Okay. Some drugs do have higher limits than others when it comes to this, so be mindful of that. It's very difficult to OD on cannabis, but it's extremely easy to OD on opioids like fentanyl, right? As we've been hearing over the past couple of years. Withdrawal. Unpleasant symptoms, as I mentioned. Okay. They will eventually go away. So if you are attempting to become clean, right, and sober, if you go to an inpatient rehab center, the first week or so is absolutely awful, because the withdrawal symptoms will make you think that you are dying. They will literally make you think that you are dying. I'm not exaggerating when I say that you will think that you are dying. And really, the psychological thing that the psychological feeling that is occurring at the same time, the thoughts that sort of meet the physical withdrawal, is that the thing that's going to prevent me from dying is going to be the drug. So I just need another hit. I just need another fix. And so there's that compulsive behavior, because withdrawal symptoms are unpleasant, and as a species, we attempt to avoid unpleasant things. Okay, we don't want to actually do these unpleasant things, so if the only thing that's going to prevent me from feeling like absolute garbage is this drug, then give me some of it right now. This all then, you can apply a theory about how addiction then is counteracted by the brain, and so how some people become addicted immediately versus how some people then take many more hits or ingestion or whatever, smoke, whatever it may be, however you consume the drug, how there are individual differences between that person who is addicted immediately versus the person who's never addicted or addicted or gets addicted much later at much higher doses. And this is called hypersensitivity theory. Okay. Individual differences on how your brain and body respond to keep you at optimum peak efficiency. Obviously going to be an individual difference, and so if those things are weaker, then you're going to end up with a person who is more susceptible to addiction. Okay. Now, review just in general. Hopefully you received some sort of education in high school about some of this stuff, right? Let me know in chat if you had DARE at some point in your schooling, whether it's elementary. I think DARE ended before you all were in high school, but if you did DARE, drug abuse resistance education. Drug abuse resistance education, right? Yeah, you were all super young. I had it in elementary school too. It's and so okay, so the program did last for a while. So there's a reading. So make sure you do the reading on this one. I forgot the name is escaping me right now, but it's read it around now as we're talking about addiction. So, maybe it's Linum. I think the Linum. So it's on Brightspace. Do the reading, and you'll find that DARE did absolutely nothing. DARE did absolutely nothing to prevent drug use and abuse in a longitudinal. So the Linum study is longitudinal, following a group that didn't have DARE, a group of kids that didn't have DARE, and then following another group of kids that did have DARE, and there was no difference in drug use rates between the two longitudinal groups. That's pretty stunning, right? There's a lot of money invested in DARE. There was a ton of money invested in DARE. But anyways, that's all to say. So do that reading. But that's all to say. How old is your brother, Kat? That's all to say that some of this stuff should be, maybe not in the more specific stuff, but some of these basic facts should be reviewed from your time as a child. Okay? So, as I just mentioned, any use of any drug, crack included, even though Pee Wee Herman, Paul Rubens was like, not even once, right? Or the picture of the rusted out oil tanker that kind of looks like Thomas did meth, and it says meth, not even once, right? Thomas the Tank Engine. You know Thomas the Tank Engine. The idea is here that regardless, 12, all right, it's not bad. The idea here is that we all individually differ on how much any one time use of a drug will impact our body, both on a biological, psychological, or social well-being spectrum. Now, granted, most of today is about addiction. So we're talking more along the lines of I'm now more advanced to the point where I need this physically and psychologically, right? So one of the reasons why I break out alcohol and tobacco into their own separate chats and discussions is because they're the most widely used drugs worldwide. They are legal pretty much everywhere. There are some exceptions, of course. Even in the United States, there are some exceptions. Utah being one of the strange exceptions, where while it is legal in the state of Utah because of the U.S. Constitution, they control it significantly. But then there are also counties within within the United States that are dry, so there are no liquor stores or bars within the county limits. Eureka used to be a dry city. That's why all of the bars and restaurants are on the outskirts of town. Woodford County used to be a dry county as well. And then I break out cannabis because of its resurgence and so growth, its resurgence into the public spotlight, and all of the legality associated with it. And, you know, because most of us are in Illinois right now, it being legal, I think, bears discussing, right? I did have a class associated with narcotics and opioids, but because of the week additional spring break, I ended up cutting that out. And then today I'll talk a little bit about prescription medication, over-the-counter medication abuse. I think that's on the next slide. So if you're familiar with all of the prescription meds, oh boy. So these are the most abused prescription drugs. So in bold is basically the substance name. Okay. Basically the substance name, and then in parentheses are the street names. Please tell me you've heard of some of these street names. Let me know in chat if you've heard other ones too. I'd like to add them to my list. So specify what it is, what the drug is, and then specify a street name. So if there are newer street names than this. So your amphetamines. Bennies, Black Beauties, Crosses. These amphetamines, generally speaking, are your Ritalin and your Adderall. Okay? So if you do not have ADHD, then you should not be taking Ritalin or Adderall. It is essentially speed. It's an amphetamine. It's not methamphetamine. But amphetamines do speed up your system. And if you do, it has a paradoxical effect to those who have ADHD. It calms them down and it laser focuses them so they can actually spend time on a single task. People who don't have ADHD should not be taking amphetamines. This is a massive stimulant, right? Methylphenidate, Jif, PMP, Arbol, Skippy. I love these names. I'm not entirely sure what methylphenidate does, but it does something. Do I have it written down? By the way, 7 million Americans 10 years ago does it. Soccer mom speed. Love it, David. Love it. Bummer. No, I didn't write it down. You can go look up what methylphenidate does. Barbiturates, of course. Barbiturates. Barbs. Blockbusters. Barbs. Obviously for the barbiturate part, the BARB, excuse me. Blockbusters. These are going to knock you out. They're sedatives. They're going to knock your ass to the ground. Okay, so if you take too much, you might go to sleep and never wake up. Hydrocodone, bitartrate, Vike, Watson 387, Hydro. Those names might actually tell you what this is. So hydrocodone is Vicodin, trade name Vicodin. So that's why Vike is on there. But you could also refer to it as Hydro if you've got a... So Vicodin is a brand name. Hydrocodone is the generic name, okay, the substance name, right? Oxycodone, HCl. So Oxycontin, okay, Oxy, OC, Orange Cross, Oscar. These again, opioids. So those two are opioids, but they are prescription drugs, and yet they are abused, right? And again, we could have partialed out that part of the topic and saved it for another day, but unfortunately, we don't have the time. Flunitrazepam, R2 Mexican Valium, Rofies, not roofies, Rofies, like trophies. Valium, by the way. So things that end in Pam, or Zipam. Oh, okay. Thanks, Leah. Methylphenidate. Treats ADHD and narcolepsy. All right. Very cool. So anything that ends in Zipam is essentially an anti-anxiolytic. It's going to calm you down. So it's not a sedative the same way that barbiturates are or benzos are, benzodiazepines. But it is going to calm you down. So if you've ever had Valium or Xanax, that's a Zipam. That ends in the suffix Zipam. So you be able to tell what kind of drug it is by its suffix. Benzodiazepines, they have a wide range of effects. Benzos do. Mostly depressants, sedatives, okay? Sticks, benzos, footballs, bars. Yeah, man. Morphine. Of course, this is an opioid that is prescribed. Just called Benz. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Benz. Oh, or Benzie. Benzies. Benzos. Yeah. Morphine. So this is an opioid that's been around for a long time. Morphine is perhaps the most potent form of opium, followed by heroin. As far as natural byproducts of the poppy flower is concerned. If you were in a hospital and you had some surgery, most likely got some morphine right after surgery. I know I did, and it was lovely. It was amazing. I had a morphine drip. I could turn that up if I wanted to. Oh, yeah. Miss Emma, monkey, the white stuff, because it's white, if it's in powder form. Fentanyl, okay, this is synthetic opioid developed to be more potent than morphine, and so you might have heard about it. If you haven't heard about fentanyl, you may have been under an Illinois rock this entire time, because the opioid crisis has affected Illinois significantly in its more rural white populations. Apache, China Girl, and the reason why China Girl is indicated on the street name list is because a lot of the fentanyl comes out of China and it gets used to cut heroin, cut cocaine, and what I mean by cut, so if you're not familiar with the lingo there, cutting means reducing the potency of the drug that you're cutting it with, okay? So if you want heroin and you cut heroin with fentanyl, then you are reducing the potency of heroin, even though fentanyl is actually more potent than heroin, so, whatever. But if you cut cocaine, which is a stimulant, with fentanyl, which is a depressant, pain reliever, then you are diluting the cocaine stimulation, right? So they're uncut versus cut. Uncut is way more valuable than cut drugs. Patches, dance fever. I don't think it does any of that. Codeine. So, Tylenol is it? So codeine is like, acetaminophen on steroids. Okay, so it's a pain reliever, but you can get addicted to it because of its pain relief. Okay, so T3s essentially is, I think, referring to Tylenol with codeine in it. AC/DC and Codes, right? And then that should be dextromethorphan, not destro. Sorry, that should be a DEX, not DES. Dextromethorphan. Ever take cold medication? It's a cough reliever. It's technically a cough suppressant. So dextromethorphan is apparently no street names for it. Call it Dextro, maybe. Dexters. There we go. Get that on Urban Dictionary. Dextros. Fannies. I don't know. Don't say that if you're in, like, England or Australia or something. Because, I mean something different than it does here in the United States. Oh, okay. Any questions about abused drugs? A big market for them. Big market. All right. Moving on. Psychoactive drugs. So these, the drugs types that I have on here, can either be, quote unquote, illicit drugs or prescription drugs. It's just the psychoactive effects. So you have hallucinogens, and a sort of a subgroup of hallucinogens are psychedelics. These include cannabis, LSD, mescaline. Okay, so one of the things they do is alter your sensory perception, so you get visual and auditory hallucinations. Right? Stimulants: nicotine, caffeine, cocaine, amphetamines, methamphetamine, right? So boosting activity of the central nervous system by boosting acetylcholine, which is basically the neurotransmitter that tells your body to do stuff, okay? It also increases serotonin levels as well. And what else did I put in here? And dopamine, which of course makes us feel good, okay? Super rewarding effects, which is why meth is so addictive, which is why nicotine is so addictive, because of just acetylcholine, serotonin, and dopamine that we all get just from each hit, right? Stimulants in general bring about the most rapid development of psychological and physical dependence. Stimulants do. So you get addicted very quickly to these kinds of drugs, and you stay addicted to these kinds of drugs. And we'll talk about nicotine specifically after Easter. Depressants. I could put barbiturates and opiates underneath depressants like I have with psychedelics here. But I like to partial these out, actually. So there's depressants, then there are super depressants, and then there are pain relievers and anesthetics or analgesics and opiates, okay? They can be sedatives. Generally speaking, sedatives are in these two categories. Hypnotics could be in this category. So obviously the main depressant we could talk about is alcohol, which we will next week, okay? Drowsiness, lethargy, slow sensory responsiveness, and slow cognition, okay? They're highly addictive, especially these suckers right here, okay? Implicated in a lot of suicides. And then, of course, these suckers right here, opiates and opioids, accidental overdose deaths, of course. Okay. Now, to get us started in drug action, this is what acid would do, Pokemon style.
Great job on that last battle, Pikachu. Look at all this cash we won.
Help. Meanwhile...
That's... Hey.
So what's the deal with us? Are we like dating
It's
or
just
what?
I'm
what
not
are we...
looking for a relationship right now.
You mean not with a woman?
Oh! Prepare for trouble.
Shut the fuck up! Go get him, Pikachu!
Sorry, language.
Go get him, Ash!
Go, Muck.
Muck.
Pikachu, use Thunderbolt!
Oh, for fuck's sake. Muck, use acid!
Muck.
Looks like it's ineffective. Pikachu, use Thunder! Pikachu?
Pika, Pikachu.
What's the matter, Pikachu?
Meow, that's right.
You okay, Pikachu?
Sorry about the jump scare.
Great job on that last battle, Pikachu!
Muck, use acid! Go get him, Ash!
Great job on that last battle, Pikachu!
Muck, use acid! Go get him, Ash!
Hey, get off of me! I'm a Pokemon! 6th generation. Hey, where you going?
God, I'm lonely.
Oh. Psychedelics for y'all. Alright. That's enough of that. I hope you enjoyed your childhood being, ruined. Alright. How you get drugs into your system? Well, you can take it many ways. Please do not do any rectal challenge you ever find on the internet. Please do not. This is my appeal to you all. Please, please, please. Do not do anything that says, hey, do this up your butt. No. No, no, no. Okay? Jeez. Can't believe I have to say that out loud. Okay. Other ways to take drugs orally, of course, by injection, inhalation. Okay. You can absorb certain kinds of opioids through your skin, so be careful about that. That's how some cops were ODing on fentanyl, because they would touch open baggies and get the fentanyl on their skin and OD. And then they didn't have naloxone available, and they ended up dying. So yeah, it's pretty rough. All right. So depending on how you put it in your body changes the way that you feel the effects. So if you take it directly into your bloodstream or you inhale it, you are going to feel immediate effects. Okay, so if you smoke a cigarette, if you smoke a joint, then you're gonna feel it immediately. Heroin, injecting it directly into the bloodstream, for example, feel the effects immediately, and that's because of the blood action taking it to your brain, right? If you, depending on what your blood serum is like, okay, how much fat soluble these substances are, you will get high faster, okay? So most psychoactive drugs are lipid soluble or fat soluble enough to get past the blood-brain barrier pretty easy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be psychoactive. Some of these drugs can also get past the placental barrier. So if a female is pregnant and is doing drugs, then most of those will get into the baby's bloodstream, okay? And drugs are considered teratogens, and teratogens are things that will harm fetal development. Okay. So there are two kinds. So once we get past the blood-brain barrier, the drug needs to then act on, taking a bit of a foray here, the drug needs to act on the neurotransmitter sites, okay? Because most drugs act like neurotransmitters, okay? They act like neurotransmitters. So one kind of action is an agonist. And what an agonist does is it mimics one of your naturally made neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, etc. Okay, and it attaches to the same receptor on postsynaptic neurons. Okay, so the receiver neuron, it'll float into the the intracellular space and attach to that. It'll attach to those receptors, which means then, in addition to the receptors that are being created, the neurotransmitters that are being created, you have more of that neurotransmitter, which means you're going to receive more of those effects. Okay. You can also have partial agonists. So here's a full agonist. This lock and key is 100% the same thing as your neurotransmitters. We could also have a partial agonist over here that there's not a full lock and key. Okay, there's not a full lock and key that fills the receptor site, and so you get the same effects but at a reduced level because they're not fully the same. So that's what an agonist does. And then so the other kind of drug action is the antagonist drug. Okay, so this kind of drug attaches to a receptor site to block your naturally made neurotransmitters. Okay, so it essentially fills part of the receptor site with its own lock and key, but prevents activation of the other two parts of the receptor site. So in order for a neurotransmitter to actually tell the receiving neuron what it needs to do, fire, not fire, you need to activate all points of the receptor site. But if this drug comes in and just fills part of the lock with its key, then it's essentially like putting silly putty or some sort of gum spray into a deadbolt lock. Can't stick your key in there, right? So the key is the neurotransmitter that your body produced that it wants to tell you to do something, but the drug is like, nah, you can't go here. Nah, you can't come here. This is not for you. And what ends up happening is the body isn't getting the right messages across because those messages are being blocked. Okay, so agonists tend to increase the activity of neurotransmitters. Antagonists tend to decrease the activity of neurotransmitters. And so you can sort of apply what would be an agonist and what would be an antagonist, but I can't tell you like alcohol is an antagonist, because I actually have to say alcohol is an antagonist to insert neurotransmitter here. So it's an antagonist to a specific, or agonist to a specific neurotransmitter. Okay. So we're going to end today with talking about models of addiction. Okay, so there are a few models of addiction. The first one I want to mention is the biomedical model, of course. This contrasts with our biopsychosocial model, yeah? So addiction is a disease, and a disease that has a cure, right? So that's what the model essentially says, okay? Then the disease preys upon biological vulnerabilities. And specifically, physical dependence is focused on here. So having a physical dependence, not necessarily a psychological dependence, but a physical dependence in the biomedical model. And one of the reasons the biomedical model works for addiction as an explanation is because a high concordance rate among identical twins who are addicted to a substance. Okay. Reward models. So this is a class of models, by the way. I just want to say that this is a class of models. There are specific subsets of models. Then there are rewards models. Okay, rewards models. Addiction as pleasure seeking. So people are addicted because that dopamine hit. And then social learning models explain how we are addicted because we see that our models are addicted. Okay. This is quite possibly one of the more truer models. Truer, I have air quotes around truer. Because of the concordance rates among children and their parents who smoke cigarettes or are tobacco and nicotine users. Okay. So social learning models explain quite a bit of legal drug use and drug disorders. Okay, so one of the biomedical models that has the most traction is the withdrawal-relief hypothesis. Okay, and that is people generally feel sort of bleh because their neurotransmitters don't work properly. And so drugs are used to increase, so agonists are used to increase the effects of neurotransmitters so people can feel better, okay? The withdrawal-relief hypothesis essentially explains the mechanism with SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, okay? So if a neurotransmitter is reuptaking too much serotonin, it's not getting to the neurotransmitters, right? And so abnormally low levels of serotonin being broadcast to other neurons might suggest that this is leading to the depression and the anxiety effects, the disorders there. And so we use an agonist, like an SSRI. Well, technically it's an antagonist because it prevents reuptake. But my point still stands, okay? Oh, should have just put that up. However, it does have some shortcomings. It doesn't explain why a user begins taking the drugs in the first place or explains relapses, okay? Which for harder drugs like heroin or cocaine, why relapse would happen or why relapse would happen even after withdrawal symptoms have started. Can't play for you this video, unfortunately. One, we don't have time, and two, it's probably just going to be copyright flagged. So what I think you should do is find the 60 minutes hooked video on YouTube and watch that. It's a very good explanation for biomedical models, and this woman here is a doctor. Okay. Addiction as pleasure seeking. So genetic reward deficiency has to do with a bad dopamine tract. Bad in air quotes. Like, you're not necessarily bad because you do some of these things, right? We're not ascribing morality to them. It's just not working properly, right? So genetic reward deficiency. So genes are not producing good dopamine circuitry. It's just not working properly, okay? And so addiction is pleasure seeking in order to boost the activity of the dopamine tracks and serotonin tracks and things like that, so you can feel better, right? We all want to seek things out in a pleasurable way, so, psychoactive drugs do that. Makes us feel better. And so anything, specifically stimulants, that make dopamine more abundant is critical. Those are the drugs that pleasure seeking really affects. So we're talking about cannabis, we're talking about cocaine, we're talking about amphetamines. Okay. Support for reward models comes from multiple dependencies. Okay. People who are addicted to multiple drugs instead of just one. Okay. However, its shortcomings is the gateway hypothesis. You may have heard of the gateway hypothesis. It was probably bonked into your head as you were a kid to not try certain drugs, because if you did, you might find other vile drugs. The gateway hypothesis is used specifically for cannabis, because cannabis is federally illegal, right? I'm gonna sneeze! I was trying to talk through the sneeze and it didn't work. Right. Previously, historical drugs for children have been alcohol and tobacco products and nicotine. That, like, if you do any of these drugs, then you'll find the harder stuff, because it's like, yeah, you want more pleasure, and so you've already tolerated this cannabis garbage, and so you want to get the harder drugs. So I want to go get some cocaine, like be like Freud and just do cocaine every day. Okay, that's not actually what happens. Gateway hypothesis is not supported by any empirical thing that I've come across. The other issue is the wanting and liking theory. It's also called incentive sensitization. So wanting and liking. So it's two stages: the wanting, let me move here, and the liking. Okay. So good feelings, the liking. Okay. The liking then produces a wanting. Okay. But getting in between the wanting and liking is quite difficult. Maybe classical conditioning, maybe. It's hard to tell. So, yes, reward models are pretty good at describing behavior, but these two hypotheses / theories have a little bit more to be desired. Okay. Social learning models. Okay. I think this is fairly self-explanatory. We have models in our lives: our parents, our grandparents, our peers, right? Peer pressure. Heard a lot about that when you were a kid. Dare. Just say no. Even to your friends. If they offer you drugs, punch them in the face. Or is that just my dare? It's probably just my dare. Just punch them right in the face. Hey, bud, you want some weed? Bam! Right? It was just drug abuse resistance education. It wasn't anti-violence resistance education or anti-violence education. Okay. Obviously, I'm kidding. You smack them. Okay. Social control theory. So if you have a very strong attachment to your family, school, or other social institutions, you will be less likely to break any social norms regarding drug use and abuse. So, yeah, my friends in high school, very, very little attachment to school or other social institutions. So they're not in this chat, or they're not in this stream right now. So I'm gonna throw them under the bus. Man, oh man, they were doing a lot of drugs. I was telling the sleep deprivation story to my 101 class yesterday, and I told them about their, like, why do a don't do a sleep deprivation challenge. Golly. And then peer clusters, right? Maintains that peer groups are strong enough to overcome controlling influence of such institutions. So even though you have strong attachment to your family, school, or other social institutions, if your peer group is strong, it might break those, right? I don't want you hanging out with that Steve anymore. I don't want you doing that. You can't talk to me that way, Dad. I'm going to hang out with whoever I want to hang out with. We're going to do so many drugs. We're going to do so many drugs. We're just going to get so high and then so wasted. 4 Locos for life. Okay. It's 11:50, but stick around. We have a couple more. We have one more thing. Stick around for just a second. But then if you want, you can watch the end of this video on YouTube. Okay. So adolescence. as I am specifically talking about, have the strongest window of vulnerability during adolescence, right? A lot of physical, biological, psychological, and social upheaval in adolescence, as you may have heard Dr. Kaiser talk about, which increases risky behavior, which increases exploration, which increases, wanting to try new things, and some of those new things are, of course, drugs. Right? No shame on any of that. But it is a window of vulnerability during adolescence. Not before, and generally speaking, not after. It's just that window of time after puberty where people are very susceptible to peer influence and exploration of new things. To explore new bodies, new feelings, new sensations, all that sort of stuff. Those things can be drugs, right? So 10 to 25. It's a pretty big window, right? But then it decreases, because then you get old and decrepit, and you're like, I don't want to do new stuff. F that. Ugh, God. I just want to sleep. Can I just sleep? You'll eventually come join me. Okay? You'll eventually come join me in the, oh my God, I'm so tired of just doing stuff. I'll come to your party. Yeah. I'm totally getting dressed right now, you say as you're in your jammies texting, eating chips on your couch. I'll totally be there. It's fine. I'll be there. Yeah, 20 minutes. It's cool. It's fine. There's another window of vulnerability among elderly folks as well. Did I put that in? Yeah, I did. But that's in your book. I think I got rid of that in the slides. So adult unawareness is a big problem in this one, right? So your parents not knowing that you're doing stuff is a problem with the spread and the peer pressure, of course. Not having those norms be side-skirted, of course. Yeah, big window of vulnerability. Let me know if you have any questions. If you're still in chat, I know some of you had to run. I am gonna go ahead and end the video here. I'll stay streaming for just a little bit while longer.